Well, Dolphy, when I moved to the London, they did warn me about the rains and how it will affect my mood. But I did not expect it was going to be in the context of the Border Gavaskar Trophy involving India and Australia in Australia. But yet here we are.
Yeah, we absolutely expected Sydney test to be rained out, but it so happens that the GABA has decided to play spoil sport in this series. Of course, there were predictions that it will be a rain interruption here and there, but it was a total washout. But the game, of course, happened in patches here and there. There were some expectations of some results somewhere in some quarters, but that's what it was. Let's speak about what's probably happened on the ground and also off it a little bit. We have a few surprises like Ashwin's retirement and Travis Head's injury speculation, Josh Hazelwood moving out midway. So, yeah, a lot happened despite the fact that rain happened.
Yeah, I'm going to start off with a quick summary of the scorecard. So Australia batted first, 445. That was a massive total by GABA standards and by Australia's recent performances at GABA.
And despite
And
the fact that India put them on to bat first.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Uh, make no mistake. In our preview, all of us kind of agreed that if you're winning the toss, um, choosing to bowl first is actually the right decision. So it looked like India had the game in the driver's seat by virtue of winning the toss, but that was not the case, which was a pleasant surprise for the both of us as Australia fans. Australia 445, and of course Steve Smith with a comeback century after ages, and Travis Head being the usual tormentor. It's insane how he's putting up these big daddy hundreds every time it's against India. It's not even like 102 or 107. It's always 150 or more. Then you have India 260, and very lucky to get to the total. We'll definitely talk about that. That late wagging of the tail and Jadeja coming back into the side and saving the match. So that left India with what, roughly a 190 deficit by the end of first innings, avoiding follow on. That was the big story. Something else we'll get into at the
Speaking
end
of
again.
follow on, I just want to mention one trivia out there. This I came across on Twitter somewhere recently during the match that in the Kolkata Test 2001, the famous follow on across all of Test cricket history, Australia scored 445 in the first innings, by the way.
Of
And it's the exact same total.
So the
And
follow on was never on the cards, is what you're saying.
yeah. So and India score while India were actually chasing and they were like I think 6 or 7 down. People are speculating if they would be all out for 171, which was the total back in 2001 as well. But they ended up making 260 to save the follow-on, thankfully. And yeah, you don't have a Steve Waugh anymore in the team, so good for Australia.
Right. So Australia with 190 lead or so, and into day five at this point, and the ultimate tribute to baseball of an innings that was close to 5 runs on over 89 for 7. The less said about that innings, the better, I feel. And top scorer being Pat Cummins with 22 of 10 balls says so much about the mindset of Australians. And they declared giving India like, I don't know, 350 odd runs to chase.
And I think
In
it was
return,
around 270 or something like that. Yeah,
oh yeah, of course.
yeah, yeah.
190 plus 90. Yeah, math is not really my strong suit. And in return, India, all they could manage was 8 runs before rain returning for what looked like its sixth or seventh innings in the test match. Ultimately, the match fizzling out. Like you said at the beginning, at times it looked to be really interesting and looking to go down the wire. But in the end, the feeble humans were no match for the force of nature. That was the rain, and we had to bow down and once again be reminded that it's the rains and the gods of nature, um, who almost, puppet us
Yeah.
humans.
And thankfully, the fortress of Gaba was not breached once again. So,
Well, technically,
thank
it was reached by the rains, I would argue. But yes, not by a
yeah.
visiting nation. So I guess that's a win. All right. The first question I have for you is, what are some of the positives for Australia? They batted first, so let's start with them. And of course,
Yeah, I think positives. Look, there. I said earlier in the series when he was first picked, Nathan McSweeney is going to be a constant throughout the series. They're not going to dent the confidence of a youngster like that by dropping him for a couple of performances here or there. Especially in a series like this, where everyone's aware of the fact that he was thrown to the wolves. So that's one. He's looking solid. He's a positive for sure. The biggest positive for Australia in terms of their batting is definitely Steve Smith coming back to form on a tricky pitch. Of course, he had his time in the initial first, uh, shaky time, I meant, in the initial first 20, 30 balls where he was struggling a little bit, getting squared up. But like usual, like he usually does, Steve Smith got lucky, but he was actually playing to the line of the ball, so he missed the edge a couple of times, and then that's how he usually plays, and then he goes on to make a big hundred. So it was a sort of a classic Steve Smith innings
classic
in my
teams.
book.
Yes, I
Yeah,
think that's the
like
best way.
he doesn't seem like he's overly confident right at the
Yeah,
start. Like players, great players, generally people like Virat Kohli, Joe Root, these people look solid at the start and, they seem like scoring 100 and then they
yeah,
get out. But Steve Smith looks like he's going to be out all the time in the first 20, 30 balls. That's classic Steve Smith. And then he goes on to score 100 because he gets into that fine tune mode and then he starts talking to the pitch. I
gets
think
into
that's
the
when I
play.
actually realized he's made a comeback. So
Yeah,
he starts talking a lot to the pitch. He starts talking to the ball. He makes these gestures, weird ones, and awkwardness. And
counts the
I even
fielders.
saw, yeah, there was one over where he was actually, appreciating the pitch or, talking to the pitch that it actually made the ball move this way or that way. And then one of the Indian fielders just looked at him and asked, Mate, are you saying something to me? Or then he said, No, no, not you.
Yeah,
So
it's
I think that's the Steve Smith that I always had, looked at, and we always looked
we have
at in the past.
enjoyed,
Yeah,
growing up
enjoyed looking at that Steve Smith.
in
So he
that.
was in that zone, and I think he will make a big score in, at the MCG and also in the next test at the ACG at his home ground. So that's a big positive. The second big positive, of course,
Yeah,
is Travis
but
Head.
before we, of course, I have some. I have to say something about Steve Smith, given my history. It's always a pleasure when he gets back to form. Like you said, it's not about the runs, right? It's the quirkiness, and it's like this guy's like one of us. His technique is baffling, and he is not confident to face the bowlers. But he gives you hope that if you stick around long enough, you can turn around. And that's a life lesson for me. It goes beyond cricket. And I just
Yeah,
love this guy. And I've been disappointed that he hasn't been in the best of form. So it was really heartwarming to see him and have that romance with the pitch, like you categorically pointed out. But it's also interesting to note that this 100 has come off the back of uh, the top order doing a much better job than they have done in
yeah,
recent times. And I was actually very keen on getting this stat, but I did not have any luck. But Steve Smith's performances, when the top three has faced 50 balls or more, I want to
yeah,
compare that
absolutely.
with
Yeah,
when that doesn't happen, because he's somebody who needs that time. The game needs to settle down for him to come and do his thing. Like,
yeah.
I know there was the infamous opening experiment, but even without that, it looked like he was batting in as an opener, because the openers kept falling out very cheaply,
Correct.
and
Yeah,
this was
that's why I like McSweeney. I
two
mean,
things.
he at least faces those balls, and yeah, Manas Labushin to a big extent as well. They consume that the first three, Khwaja, McSweeney, and even if they don't score big, they are consuming like easily 70 to 100 balls, which
That's
is
true.
enough time for Steve Smith to come in and play against the soft one.
Yeah. So I think if the top order can continue with that, because this is something Steve Smith actually specifically said when the openers bat out there long enough. There is a reason why you are sent out as an opener to negate the new ball
Yeah,
and you know con- to an extent counter the conditions of the pitch, and that's what your
yeah,
number threes and number fours need. And this time the openers did their job, and even Labuschagne, he did not score a
yeah,
lot,
yeah,
face the balls, which allowed Steve Smith and Travis Head. He's just an aberration at this point, but
yeah.
certainly
No,
Steve
of course,
Smith.
he's Travis Head and Bumrah are no more positives for each of their teams. I
They're
think
just a given.
they are just inevitable. They
Yeah,
just happened out there. So yeah, they are definitely positive signs. Of course, people like Alex Carey also played a part in this test match. Folks like Pat Cummins also deserve a mention from a batting point of view. From a bowling, I was a little disappointed initially with Josh Hazelwood being ruled out, but later it was diagnosed to be a calf strain. So it's a different injury. Feel frustrated for him, feel sorry for him, but I think they should have just gone ahead with Boland in this test match. But anyway, Boland is coming back at the MCG. What better platform for him again?
that's true. Yeah, some
Yeah,
of these selection decisions are baffling to say the least. But let's switch gears and talk about India. Okay, the big question is, did rain save the day for India? Did rain save the test match? Because there you can draw a lot of parallels between this game, the one that Australia got away with in Manchester in the last Ashes game, when England looks set to take it home, but we got really lucky.
yeah.
Would that be fair to
Yeah,
say
I
that?
think it's almost similar. Very good assessment from your side. So I think it's very similar, it's baffling that Indian fans and Indian analysts, pundits, commentators, they're almost in elation. Like India avoided this follow-on, and as if they are going in with a moral victory going into Melbourne. But I don't feel that's the case. The rain almost saved this match for them. They didn't play well. I mean, 89 for 7, getting Australia out there in the second innings, that's not because of your doing. That's because of Australia's strategy to just
Yeah,
go out there, play 20, 15, 20 overs, and give India 50 overs to score somewhere around 300. That's part of the strategy. I mean, just because Australia got 89 for 7 doesn't mean that they're going to be 89 for 7 in the first innings of any
yeah,
test match.
yeah,
That was just part of the plan, and everyone played to that plan, including Steve Smith nicking here and there, and everyone going for their shots. They just wanted that quick fire 100 runs to set India a target. Although you might argue that it's probably a little too late that they declared in the first innings. Sorry, they got out in the first innings at 4:45. But yeah, it was all part of the plan. But I find it really baffling that Indian fans and people in the dressing room and everyone else celebrated as if this was something which India claimed from the jaws of defeat, and it was almost like the GABA victory of the past and things like that. But it's absolute rubbish. If you ask
yeah.
me.
Frankly put,
I
it
think
was embarrassing.
they have
Given
more
the
negatives
price
in this
this,
test match. Yeah, they have more negatives in this test match than Australia. Of course,
yeah,
both teams have problems, but they
absolutely.
have more negatives.
But couple of positives, like you said, I'm gonna take Bumrah out of the equation because at this point it just doesn't make sense to talk about him. He's just a freak. It's like
Yeah,
Sachin in the 90s or Steve Smith in the 2010s.
yeah, absolutely. You just look at people like Shane Bond, Shoaib
Yeah,
Akhtar running in. You expect a wicket of every ball. That's what's happening right now with Bumrah bowling. You're like looking at it. Oh God, is this going to be a wicket? And then yeah,
that's right. Every dot ball is a victory for a batsman at this point. But other
yeah,
than that, we need to talk about KL Rahul because he has earned it. He probably uh, had the most criticism coming into the side, and a lot of
absolutely.
people did not think he should have been given the rope, including us, honestly speaking. But safe to say, he's India's best batter by a mile at this point, and he has
Big
looked the
time.
most solid out
He's
there.
solid. He's exactly doing what Australia's top three are doing right now for Steve Smith and Travis Head coming in. And that's where I think Yashasvi needs to learn from. Because KL Rahul is actually eating those balls, also scoring runs. He's looking solid in his defense, attack, everything. He's actually playing technically really sound, more more sound than anyone else, even in the Australian camp
Yeah.
right now.
I mean, this
And
was never a surprise, right? So in the current
correct,
side, you would argue KL Rahul is the most technically gifted batsman,
of
maybe
course,
right after Kohli.
yeah,
It
yeah,
is always a question of confidence and
yeah.
composure, and somehow he has just shown up to the occasion.
Yeah, yeah. I think he's got flair. He's got flamboyance as well. If you ask me, KL Rahul is like a decent mix of Rohit Sharma and Kohli put together. He has that flamboyance of Rohit Sharma and elegance as well when he really needs to free his arms and go for it. And he
Yeah,
has the technical ability to defend balls and also good stroke play like Kohli during his prime.
a
So
few
I think
changes are
that's a big
coming.
positive. But the
Yeah.
problem is, despite the fact that he's doing his duty as an opener, there is this big failure sitting in at number three, which is Shubman Gill. And then you have
Oh, wow.
Kohli, and then you have Sharma. I think this the upper middle order for India is letting them down big time. And they better step up, or I think they're not going to make any hard calls mid series. It's going to definitely make speculations around the media that that thing is well with the things are not well within the Indian dressing room and things like that. But I think they're not doing justice to their positions right now in the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Jadeja coming in, something
Big
our dear
positive.
friend Archit had been screaming from the top of his building for the three test matches now.
Yeah.
Why
I
is
think
he
it's
not?
made a statement.
Yeah, yeah. And if you look at the stats, even before this game, it definitely looked foolish to not include somebody like Jadeja in the side,
Yeah.
given his history and stats against Australia. He came in and proved, hey, there you go. This is what you were
Yeah.
missing out in the first two games, or especially the second game. Came in, saved the side, saved the match, I would say, because even with the rains, there were times when Australia could have walked away with a victory, and it was Jadeja standing in
Yeah.
between
Yeah. Yeah.
Australia.
No, absolutely. I think they delayed Australia's plans a little bit, Jadeja and the tail. This is where I find it interesting. Like in home conditions in India, you can't imagine an Indian team without Ashwin and Jadeja in it. You need both of them. It's not an
Yeah.
either or kind of a situation. But in Australia, it's always that Ashwin is seen like a possible pick. Should we play the fourth bowler, fifth bowler, and all these questions come in. Should
Which
we
is
pick a pure
insane.
batter?
We should do a separate episode on Ashwin where
Yeah,
we talk about the disrespect for a legend, for somebody who has more wickets than Nathan Lyon, and
yeah. No,
the
absolutely. I
treatment
think
that
that's
he
where I
gets.
think Ashwin lost out, but Jadeja came in. It
Yeah,
was a blessing in disguise, of course, but I think we can make space for both in the team. Is my feeling. Like Jadeja can play as a pure batter as well, and tweak in
he has
a couple
earned
of
that in
overs
the
here
last
and
two
there. Yeah,
years.
yeah, yeah. So that's a big positive for India. Of course, you may not agree with this, but Akash Deep has been a good positive. I mean, of course, he went for runs here and there, but
Akashdeep as a number 11, yes.
no, but he's definitely going to play the next test match. I don't think they will just quickly shuffle. But if common sense prevails, and if you ask me, they should give a chance to Praseed Krishna. Just from a horses for courses kind of philosophy, I think they should go with Praseed Krishna. He's a tall bowler, almost in the Ishant Sharma mold.
Mhm.
We have seen him a lot in the past as well, and also in the IPL. He's going to be good at the MCG kind of pitch. So,
That's true.
but they will go
Yeah,
with Akash. They may not make any other change.
I think they should. Like I know I said it jokingly, but he seems to come in at 11 and bolster the Indian batting lineup so
Yeah,
much more than what
no,
the top.
definitely. And they are not going to drop Siraj either. So I think Siraj has been bowling his heart out, so he should be there.
That's true.
But let's talk about the next test and what the possible changes might be a little later. But from positives and negatives point of view, I think these are probably the couple of positives that India has. to take away from this test match. Bumrah, of course, we need not mention, but other than this, I don't think India did great in this test match. They were almost on the verge of
They
loss.
got
It
away.
would have
I
been,
think that.
yeah, they just got away, and there's nothing morally great to take away from this test match for
Right.
them. Yeah.
I think that brings us to um, the elephant in the room, the whole follow-on situation. Um, let's talk it out from both the teams' perspective, right? Let's go with Australia. You have your number 10s and number 11. Would you say the Australian bowling got it wrong given the circumstances? Do you think they should have bowled differently? They could have bowled better.
I feel they were one man down and
Okay.
they were struggling on the field very clearly. Humid conditions, rainy, cloudy.
Mhm.
So they were struggling. Pat Cummins was almost drenched in sweat, and Mitch Stark as well. Although Mitch Stark is known to be one wiping out the tail,
Mhm.
and but he can only do so much, right? You need that third bowler at least as a support, and it's not like Nathan Lyon could actually work these players out given the conditions. That's pitch actually changed. Let's face it, the pitch changed because the weather changed. Things didn't go according to plan, whether it was Australia or India. And I think they were just bowling with three bowlers. Mitch Marsh is not really a support bowler. I think he was bowling just for the sake of it, 4 overs, just to bide time. And then you have Travis Head bowling 3 or 4 overs here and there. I don't think Australia has a great bowling unit with one man down. So that's the real struggle. I won't blame them for the situation.
Yeah, I
They
felt
have
like,
in the past,
especially
although
on.
although although I'll
Mm,
give it to you. Let me finish. Although I give it to you
it is.
that Australia have always struggled against the tail. They don't have a particular strategy against the tail.
I
It's
wonder.
usually
I really can't think of a recent scenario at the Gabba where Australia has struggled against the tail, which ended up costing us the test match. Can
no.
you?
eh,
No.
no, but on a serious note, any team they struggle against the tail. I mean, it's also because they don't have any particular plans against them. If they start counterattacking, then they look clueless, and then they go
That's
with
true.
short
I felt
balls.
like on
Yeah,
air, some of the criticism weren't really justified because one of the recommendations that I kept hearing was, hey, why don't you bowl at the stumps? You have your number 11 and you have
yeah,
Mitchell Stark. They couldn't do that. Like they were clearly out of fuel in the tank by that time, and it
yeah,
looked
yeah.
like the likes of Stark and Cummins had to be stretchered off by the time the day was done. That
Absolutely.
is
So I wouldn't
how.
blame them for it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it was. I agree with you that this is not a new problem, but at the
yeah,
same time, I feel like this was one off where the bowlers were really down in the dumps, and
yeah,
Akashdeep just happened to be good enough technically uh, to take advantage of that. I did
yeah,
think the short ball bowling was a good plan. They had the field set up, and
yeah.
another day it could have just been edged.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
third
No,
man.
absolutely. Yeah, totally
Fine.
agree. Now let's come back to your original elephant in the room question
Yeah.
with the follow-on situation. I don't think even if there was a situation, Australia wouldn't have let India bat again because of the way they were really tired. Or maybe they would have, but I don't think they would have because I feel that Australia would have quickly batted out that day and scored that 100 runs instead of taking it to the next day and then score those 80, 90 runs. That's what they would have done because the bowlers were almost like you said, had to be carried on stretcher.
Yeah. So we were talking at length during the course of the match about this, right? But since then, I had also admitted that I'd simply got the calculations wrong in my head. And considering it was the end of day four, it was like the last 10 overs or so when the number 11s did what they did. I think Australia would have unusually enforced follow on simply because it was end of play and you would have gotten that 8 hours of rest for your bowlers overnight and they wouldn't have minded coming back simply because your Yeah, I think that gave better chances for an Australian victory.
Yeah,
Personally,
I think
I am.
only they would know, right, what
Yeah,
they exactly wanted to do. To be honest, no one has shared their plans yet as to what they were really thinking. But
that's true.
yeah, you are
But
also
I
not
think
wrong.
actually,
I
I
mean,
would say
yeah,
that in the end, I would say it would have been immaterial simply because of how much time
yeah,
was left on day five.
yeah,
So it's not one declaration that's gonna, or sorry, one enforcing of follow on or not, that's gonna come back and bite the team like how it did for England against
yeah,
Australia
yeah.
in the Ashes. So I'm
No,
willing to let this one go for that sake. But what it
absolutely.
is,
Yeah, I think even if I mean it was in the end irrelevant because of the way the rain came in pretty early on day five. Absolutely irrelevant whether they declared early, whether they batted till 455. Totally irrelevant to the discussion in hindsight. But let's come to the celebrations that India had. Overcoming the follow-on threshold. I think that was a bit of joke in some quarters, but I feel that the reason they celebrated was because they felt that this one's off the agenda right now, and they can go in confidently into the
yeah,
next two test matches.
mm, yeah. You see, I understand. I play a lot of sports, and we have watched enough sports to know at times
Yeah,
emotions can take over, and you're sitting in the dressing room and you wonder, hey, is this match going to be saved? Are we still going to be competing for the series and trophy and whatnot?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But even with all that, I felt the celebrations were over the top, especially coming from your Virat and Rohit,
yeah.
Gambhir, all your senior players. And Gambhir, of course, I think he famously commented he cares more about how your team plays rather than the results, if I'm not mistaken.
What the
And
outcome is? Yeah.
you didn't have much of a takeaway during the course of the match. You needed your number 11
I think there was some
to
network
bail you out.
issues. Just give me a second. Are you able to hear me, Chris?
Yes, I can hear you, and you're frozen, which I would say is a very appropriate reaction for how the team celebrated. So I'm gonna go on that monologue until you come back to life. The fact that you needed Akash to come in and save the day, and the fact that you are so powerless, it looked like only two factors controlled the entire game. One was the weather, and another was Australia. They dictated the game throughout, and India were at their mercy throughout, and they got bailed out in the end. And yeah, the celebrations, like I said at the start, they were embarrassing. Um, yes, right on time. You're back. I'm gonna end my rant on the follow on with that. Let's go on to the fourth test match. Still, the series very much hanging in the balance.
Yeah.
Predictions
I
positive.
think it's going to be a pitch which will favor spin on day 4 and 5. This has been something which has been a constant statement that you've been making since the Perth test. But there's been hardly a chance for
You mean you
Nathan
have
Lyon
been
or
making?
Ashwin. It's almost an irrelevant prediction at this point whether the pitch will crack up, turn, burst up, erupt, and throw a little bit of lava here and there. But nothing's happening beyond day 3 is what we have
I miss
understood.
the good old days where it was like day one and two, it favors the bowl. Day one favors the bowlers, two and three
Yeah,
batters, four and five spinners. I miss those
yeah.
days. What is this
I think
complete?
the MCG is pretty much going to offer that a
Mhm.
little bit, and Sydney for sure. MCG might actually take a little bit of time to turn, but you
Okay.
never know with the drop-in pitches in Melbourne whether it might be a flat wicket like one of those earlier BGTs where they were just batting practice.
Sure.
Uh,
But if you're going to talk about MCG, you cannot do that without this guy's name. It's a travesty that we don't have a statue for this man already. Maybe they're just waiting for him to hang up his boots.
I think the only bowler who has better average than Jasprit Bumrah at the MCG.
I, I,
For
I
sure.
think that's really underselling it. The better way to put is the bowling equivalent of Don Bradman's batting average is what Scott Boland
Absolutely.
has usually.
Absolutely. Scott Boland,
And
definitely, the first selection for MCG. Now that Josh Hazelwood has been ruled out for the rest of the series, I hope he comes back for the IPL for the RCB. But
there you are with your domestic agendas.
but Boland is definitely going to be one change. I'm really not pleased with Mitch Marsh, although they may not really drop him mid-series right now for someone like Bo Webster, who has been waiting in the wings for a bit and has had a good, successful Shields season. Mitch Marsh will continue to play, is what I'm believing. He will probably have a couple of more chances, MCG and SCG. If he fails, I'm not sure if he'll go to the spinning wickets of Sri Lanka. It might be most likely Maxwell getting the nod for Sri Lanka tour of, the Australia's tour of Sri Lanka. So,
Absolutely. And Mitch Marsh
yeah,
is just in the team because Cam Green couldn't make it, let's be honest. And
yeah,
he kind of did the green duty, I would say, taking a couple of screamers here and there. And one of them, I
yeah.
don't think it was Gully, maybe it would have been third slip. But it's safe to say he turned the game in Australia's favor because of his catching, because
I
they were
think
saying,
whatever he took were rippers, rips, snorters, stunners,
absolutely.
whatever you want to call them. Yeah.
But not within, that's not why
Not good
you're
enough.
not Johnny Rhodes. That's not why you are in the
Yeah.
team.
Exactly. So I think Mitch Marsh will be selected. I don't think there will be any other change other than Scott Boland because Usman Khwaja, mid series, he's 38, may not be dropped for some youngster like Sam Constas.
Yeah, you
There
really
is a lot of,
can't have two youngsters.
yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
really?
Especially in a very decisive test match like the
Mm.
MCG next one.
Yeah,
Whoever wins the next one, in my prediction, will go on to win Sydney as well. It
yeah,
may not be a 2-1, it will be a 3-1 result, either way, whichever team wins.
that's brave. Right.
Yeah.
Any changes for India? I know we
I
talk a
think,
lot about. Let's
yeah.
stick to the realistic ones. We know Kohli is not getting dropped. We know Rohit Sharma is not getting dropped,
Gill
and
is not
Ashwin
getting
is out of
dropped.
the equation.
I
Gill's
don't
not.
think Gill will get dropped either. No one's getting dropped from a batting point of view. Jadeja is definitely playing.
Yeah,
Washington Sundar is definitely coming in, is what I'm guessing,
that's
because
impressive.
you might need two spinners in MCG, and good to have specialist spinners like Jadeja and Washington in the side.
Mm.
Praseed Krishna for Akashdeep might be a possibility, but I don't think the
I don't
Indian
think.
selection will be too harsh on Akashdeep.
Yeah,
Uh, so
after
from
a
a horses to
match-saving
course,
performance.
yeah, from a horses for courses point of view, Prasidh Krishna might make sense, but just being fair to a youngster who's just
Yeah,
played his test match here in a decent manner at the Gabba, I think Akashdeep will continue to play Melbourne as well. I don't think there will be any other change for India other than Washington for Ashwin.
Hmm. So, result draw, Australia winning, India losing.
I think Australia will win this test match.
Okay.
Melbourne, Scott Boland
I think
picks up a
India's
five
gonna
for.
lose this one. I would like to just
We don't have Indian fans today joining us, but both of us predicting
yes.
Australia going 2
Does
1.
anybody object? Speak now or stay calm. I think India's losing and Dalfi thinks Australia is winning. No, nothing. There it is. Emotional
Hold your
unfolding.
silence forever. Yeah. Thank
Yeah,
you so
oh
much. I think
yes,
great chat. Let's look forward to Boxing Day. Have a great
absolutely.
holiday season, everyone, and subscribe to us, follow us, share more of us.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you so much.
thank you.